Welcome, everybody, to the Michael Brooks Show. We're broadcasting live from our quarantine zones with super producer Matt Leck.
Hello, folks.
How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good. Long day, but I have a lot of energy for some reason today, which is not been my story this whole pandemic. So we'll see how that lasts tonight.
Well, the sun is still coming out. High energy show with the always high energy theoretician and economist, David Griscom.
How's it going, man?
Going pretty well. On this week's program, very excited. I'm having my buddies, Wosny, Lambre, Big Woz, and Nando, Vila. We do a show called Woke Bros together. And the Woke Bros are here on TMBS. We're talking more about this attempted coup in Venezuela, what that says about the Roman decay of the American empire, more Last Dance reactions, oligarchs and sports teams, oligarchs and everything. We're talking about that. Plus, we will all react and enjoy the one moment when Stacy Abrams realized she's not going to be Joe Biden's vice president. It's very funny. It's very, very funny. All that plus a mini illicit history of permanent normalized trade relations with China. The vote in 2000 that paved the way for China's membership in the World Trade Organization, and how the politics and the economics of that moment set the stage for the world we're in today. We've got a gem with David Griscom, of course, in the postgame. Daniel Bessner joins us for a new postgame segment we're doing with him. We're switching up the postgames. Don't worry, Ben Burgess will be back next week. But on this one, we're talking with Daniel Bessner about the CIA in a new reading group segment. Joshua Kahn will be here, and then he will also switch out next week for a music history and more. We're talking about Doctors Without Borders deploying to the Navajo Nation. And let's not forget Mike Flynn's role with Turkey amidst all the drama. Donald Trump and Corona, something we actually need to analyze. Bolivia coup government causing a catastrophe with Corona and subverting, of course, a democratic process. It's a coup government. Liz Plank, not good take on history. And Nancy Pelosi lands one. She may be absolutely screwing over the country with the Republican leadership, but she finally found a way to burn Trump. And we always give credit where credit is due. So, jam-packed show as always. We appreciate everybody being here. We hope you all are staying safe, staying strong, and you and your loved ones are well. As always, sending out well wishes and friendship to all. But first, we got to start by talking about surveillance, authoritarianism, journalism, privacy, and the future of political movements globally. And I'm talking about specifically, can we chart a third way with surveillance between a platform capitalism that comes from Silicon Valley, whose deep roots in military research, in the military and deep nexus with the military industrial complex, forms how these companies and how this industry operates today with regards to our privacy, with regards to our national security policies, and with regards to other major areas of life. And a Chinese system that is pioneering new deployments and new ways of surveilling, controlling, and monitoring. It's very important, and we've been spending a lot of time on this show pushing back against the delusions, the xenophobia, the ridiculousness of those fear-mongering and attempting to wage a new Cold War with China. We need to understand how China thinks, how China perceives the world, and what a new multipolar world looks like. This is incredibly important. And we need some level of objectivity when we talk about any country and any place on the planet. Some part of politics does reside in the realm of of is versus ought. This is just how it is. This is what a place is doing. This is how it's operating. And when we see positives, as with some aspects of Belt and Road and some other aspects of Chinese policy, we will accentuate them. But we also have to be real. The policies with regard to Tibet, Xinjiang, and the Uyghurs, these are not only in the sort of parlance, I wish we could frankly come up with a better one, but these absolutely are places of serious human rights violations. These are also systems that pioneer different versions of surveillance and monitoring. And I want to remind you of one of Slavoj Žižek's very interesting insights about this that he raised on this show several months ago. What we've been talking about the last several months is the aggression emanating from the United States towards China, from the military-industrial complex, Steve Bannon, and all sorts of other nefarious interests. Žižek, though, also pointed out that in other respects, we do have a globally linked and globally integrated system where elites learn from each other. They do meet at platforms in places like Davos. They share information. They share governing technologies. And the trajectories of a increasingly repressive Silicon Valley and highly intensive monitoring in the United States, as well as some of the models coming out of China, these can be synthesized and merged and integrated for techno-corporate, political, and governmental projects that in the main are not going to serve the common interest of anybody. So we have to understand how there are similar and integrated trajectories, and if there's pathways beyond it in this regard, and specifically with the internet and surveillance. And of course, these trends are accelerating under Corona. The United States government has held talks between the FBI and Google and other firms to explore the option of using their tech to gather geolocation and data from people. Bill Barr has recently, with the able assistance of Mitch McConnell and 10 Democratic votes in the Senate, now is able to, without a warrant, look at anybody's internet browser history. The Patriot Act and a permanent nexus between private security firms and the agencies that compose the national security state, including the CIA, NSA, and others, have been steadily eroding our civil liberties for decades, and this process has only accelerated under Trump. In China, a color-coded system on smartphones is used to determine who is able to enter different zones as the quarantine has been lifted. Of course, this makes some serious and obvious immediate medical sense. Of course, China's had success in certain areas in terms of containing corona, but obviously this is going to be used for a broader project in an already repressive state apparatus. People are given a color code: green, likely clear; yellow, at risk of carrying; or red, carrying corona. This has been used to gain access to a variety of areas, of additional areas that people can be tracked in their day-to-day lives. In some ways, we can see that these systems parallel and reinforce each other. And it's very important to understand how China is generating alternatives and multipolarity in the world. But we also need to be asking ourselves very clearly, where do we want to head? And I would suggest that while we can learn from both of these systems and take advantage of tensions in the global system, we don't either want platform Silicon Valley capitalism or Chinese surveillance as a global model. Now, where is a third way? In 2018, the Financial Times reported that Emmanuel Macron was attempting to forge a European alternative. And indeed, there's no doubt that the Europeans, in contrast to, in particular, the United States, have absolutely pushed forward with consumer protection against the tech monopolies like Google. They've also done more provisions for technological access and treating internet access as a commons, and have raised concerns about privacy and openness in the main. This is important. However, the dynamic with Europe is the same in tech as it is with other key areas in terms of posing an alternative to the United States. Yes, Europe has serious achievements in things like social democracy, but it is still part of the Western security architecture. It is still part of NATO, and it is still, in the end of the day, deeply integrated with the United States. Looking at the Anglo system of surveillance alone, the Five Eyes, which include the UK, New Zealand, and Australia, the United States, and one other that I'm actually forgetting right now, that share and coordinate intelligence closely together. So Europe can come forward with important policies, but it is very unlikely to forge a different path for the internet. There's also, of course, the alternative history of the internet itself, that even as the internet was created by military and governmental research, Yasha Levine documents this incredibly well in his book and has deep relationships with the national security state. There was also the push for the free software, for Linux, for open platforms, for using the internet as a tool of openness and information sharing. One of the things that President Lula's government did in Brazil was push over government operations to open source software. And projects like the Free Software Foundation and Richard Stallman and others have done pioneering work in this regard. We don't know the answers, but we do know that a technology that dictates more and more of our lives is being governed in a trajectory by the parasitic monopolies of Silicon Valley and the aggressive surveillance of the Chinese state in directions that will not bode well for not only traditional conceptions of openness, but also obviously privacy and the capacity to do politics in the 21st century. We need to organize outside of these models and forge an actual third way that can learn from the successes of both while creating something new and genuinely democratic.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true, and I think we really need to be hitting this as much as possible too, because there's such a bad narrative that you get sometimes from like liberal media. I remember like the whole like Trevor Noah joke, for example, about privacy. It was like, oh, these old senators don't understand privacy, and that's why they're voting in the way that they do, right? It's like, no, they understand that there's a very powerful lobby and industry right there that they can, one, use to their advantage, like they are with the surveillance state, and two, get financial advantages from supporting and protecting from common sense regulations. So we desperately need to get very real about what we're up against too. It's not just like, oh, there's this older generation of boomers that just doesn't understand technology, and that's why they've let it get so bad. And understand that no, it's actually like a very powerful arm of capitalism, and data capitalism is going to be one of the most crucial developments of the past few decades.
Yeah, David, could you go to the, I put in the outline, I can't share screen because I'm posting, but it reminds me of a article by Evgeny Morozov in The Baffler called The Meme Hustler. And it's about how basically Michael mentioned open software, which is like, it's a slip because like free software has been erased from history basically because of corporate interests, right?
Mea culpa, because I should not, those are very important differences right there. And even as a non-tech expert like myself, those are really big differences.
But free software doesn't feel, it's not even part of the lexicon anymore because was like, this was, also, all code should have been open and, and I'm probably getting a lot of things wrong, so I don't want to get too technical about it, but it should be, cut and paste. Every line of code should be open to everyone and usable by everyone. Open software meant licenses, but like we have it open. So basically corporations can come in and bootstrap projects made by people that they're not really paying payroll to.
Right. And also, and the difference between like an open platform that everybody can use versus is the actual architecture open for people to refine and improve the technology in an open and democratic way. I mean, these things have been completely erased from the history. There's no doubt about it. And also, it's especially again with regard to the fear mongering with China. Of course, Chinese companies are connected deeply with Chinese national security policy. Guess where else that's true? In the United States. And, this is nothing. I mean, all one need do is go back to 2012 and just, again, read the Snowden revelations. And of course, the scale of NSA surveillance and how easy the FISA courts were And that process, again, is ongoing. And some of the new things that have come through in the last couple of weeks with the Trump administration should terrify you. But even, in addition to that, you have to look at that and say, why was the NSA aggressively spying on Petrobras, as an example? And how does that, as part of the same program, have potential overlaps with phone companies giving away people's data? What is the role of private security contractors, which are subcontracted out across all of these areas? Outsourcing privatization and public-private partnerships, wasn't just for the parts of the economy that these people took less seriously. It was an ideology that goes to the heart of the most sensitive areas of government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, so we'll do, and I think I'm really glad you brought up. I hope we can have Yevgeny Morozov on some point. He's a good, big fan of Yevgeny Morozov. He's definitely somebody, everybody should read his myth busting about Silicon Valley and techno optimism, and he's a great thinker. Yeah, he's really good. He's a really, really good. I mean, especially when this stuff has gotten more fashionable, but when he was putting this stuff out in 2012, 2014 even, the delusion and optimism about Silicon Valley and the arrogance. I mean, the idea of, the Egyptians didn't have an uprising that involved students and labor and religious people and this dynamical. No. They had Facebook.
Yeah, Twitter.
They had Twitter. Done.
Mm-hmm.
That was how the Western press covered 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah, it's actually amazing to think about how off base that it was.
I know.
Good thing we're totally on base now.
Now we've we're really in good shape now. All right, so let's talk about why people should become patrons, and then we will get to the woke bros. Let's start actually with illicit histories, because these are really fun, and these are the types of projects that we've been able to expand out as the show has grown. And as I keep saying, I mean, we're well in development of a book that we're going to self-publish, which I'm really excited about. In another couple of weeks at TMBS.fm, we're going to have a whole new store ready. So more shirts, more hoodies, you'll get another chance, but also stuff like pins and stickers and a whole bunch of other kind of items like that. These illicit history documentaries, the latest of which is on Thomas Sankara with history and narration by the great Milton Alamati, is still behind the paywall. And if you have the capacity at $21 or above, you can become an illicit history doc producer. We've taken people's suggestions on subjects they want. They get the documentaries first, and then we unlock all of them into a playlist on YouTube, which you should definitely watch because this content's really great. We're going to just play a minute of the history of the implosion of neoliberalism that we did with Mark Blythe, which you can watch now. This is on our illicit history playlist on YouTube, so watch it if you haven't yet. We'll play about a minute or so of it and then talk more.
Is over. The grim certitude of the contest with communism has been replaced by the exuberant uncertainty of international economic competition. And the great question of this day is how to ensure security for our people at a time when change is the only constant. Make no mistake, the global economy, with all of its promise and perils, is now the central fact of life for hardworking Americans. It has enriched the lives of millions of Americans, but for too many, those same winds of change have worn away at the basis of their security. For 2 decades, most people have worked harder for less. Seemingly secure jobs have been lost. And while America, once again, is the most productive nation on earth, this productivity itself holds the seeds of further insecurity. After all, productivity means the same people can produce more, or very often that fewer people can produce more. This is the world we face. We cannot stop global change. We cannot repeal the international economic competition that is everywhere. We can only harness the energy to our benefit. Now we must recognize that the only way for a wealthy nation to grow richer is to export, to simply find new
This has been 30 years in the making. This has been a long time coming, and it ain't going anywhere soon.
Reducing the deficit will require difficult and unpleasant decisions. We must face a time of national austerity. Hard choices are necessary.
Now, why is inflation a crisis? You're an investor, you've got an environment of inflation. You expect to make 5% real in your investment, and inflation goes up to 7%. You might as well take your money around the back of the house and burn it. And that was basically what was happening in the 1970s. Also, by the 1970s, Labour's share of national income had never been higher. And it was effectively costless to move from job to job, which meant that capital lost the ability to discipline labour, hence why labour strikes were up and all the rest of it right across the world. Parties of the left still
All right, so this is, I'm really, really proud of these, and everything from Brazil to Jamaica to the implosion of neoliberalism. We're giving you these deep historical dives. Now, as an $8 a month patron, as a Brooksy, you get these Sunday episodes, which are the audio version of that, except much longer. And again, there's a catalog now of hundreds and hundreds of deep dives on Turkey, on Iran, on the history of different economic moments, on thinkers, including the great CLR James. And we've got a couple in the works. We're going to be working on one that will be coming out soon with Mark Ames on Russia in the 1990s and how it relates to the crisis America's in today. Another on the history, how the 1980s relationship between the Saudis, the U.S. intelligence services, and the war in Afghanistan helped create not only the crisis Pakistan is in today, but the world we're in today. We're working on one on the Obama administration, the 2008 recession. These histories are in depth. They're usually conversations with an expert that include audio archival clips. And they're trying to kind of set either a way of understanding things that are important to this show, like the politics of the Caribbean or the Middle East, or great liberation leaders in Africa, or underground histories of politics in the United States, like we did an in-depth one on the history of the original PR campaigns against Medicare for All. And the new ones we're working on now, even more so, they all share the theme of what are the key moments from the economy to globalization to the 1980s that have got us where we are today. So I love it. If David and Matt have anything to add, but I'll just say, and always we give folks deals if they need deals, and we need to, we're doing fine, but we need to keep powering ahead and keep growing. So if you have the capacity, go for it. Patreon.com/TMBS. You will get very good work. We're really proud of it.
I just wanted to add one reason, if you're on the fence about supporting us on Patreon, one, you're going to get your money's worth. I don't think anybody's putting out as much content as we are. It's pretty exceptional. But there's the second level point too, which is that there are a lot of really important left ideas and left thinkers out there. And what we've really needed for a long time is a platform and a space that we can get those ideas out there into the public. And a lot of the kind of legacy media, it's not as effective at getting those ideas out there. And YouTube is great because we're able to reach so many people, but the way that YouTube works as well, it's not going to, want to support like long conversations on Lacan or deep dives into neoliberalism, right? So having this Patreon support really allows us to be independent and to get the ideas that are very important for the left to continue to grow out there. So it's a great deal for what you're getting. And it's also an important thing too, to continue and build our left understanding and our left politics going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a reason people like Zizek keep coming back, and Adolf Reed gives us an hour of his time. And I think of what politicized me like 10 or so years ago, like in terms of actual leftism, was going online and watching long conversations, basically, like whether it's YouTube or C-SPAN. Mm-hmm. And like our conversations, if I could have us 12 years ago, I would have loved it, basically, which is nice to be in a position to be making that sort of content. So, yeah. I also want to, we don't normally read out super chats on the show like this, but P Studio says something. Funnily enough, I'm reading a history of the C language Unix This foundational tech is free as in freedom because antitrust action against Ma Bell barred them from entering the software space. Interesting. So
yeah, we got it. And this is actually, we're already cultivating another illicit history here. You can go right back, which we're going to work on. You can go back to the beginning. We did a 2-parter on the relationship between fascism and Silicon Valley with Corey Pine. And even the way the post games, which we have a lot of fun in, and that's definitely a great way for people to engage. And we take questions from patrons and everything else. And then the main show, which, you know, is a hell of an effort inside itself. And I think actually weaves a lot of these things together. So proud of it. And we appreciate everybody. A lot of people have come on board, and keep going. Thanks, everybody. Patreon.com/TMBS. We're going to take a brief break and come back so the woke bros can assemble. Welcome back, Michael Brooks Show. And if you're listening to this, you might be listening to this on the Bomb feed, which you should subscribe to on iTunes. This is Woke Bros, which is a weekly show that I do with my great and dear friends, Wosny Lambre, Big Woz, who you're very familiar with, Nando Vila, who you should be familiar with as well. I do the show with these two gentlemen, and we decided this week we would assemble as one on TMBS. I'm actually shocked we haven't done this before. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man. This is exciting to be amazing on the big show.
Yeah, you guys got called up to the show.
Varsity. Like it's like when you got called up to varsity, you know, when the guy got injured and you're like the best player on JV, but you know, you get called up to varsity.
Or like Mike, who left basketball, played AA baseball, and what is inevitably headed to the major leagues, or at least that's what the documentary would have us all believe, that he was destined for stardom in baseball if the lockout didn't happen.
Let's just get to, I was going to wait, but fine. Let's just talk about it. We've already talked about it. The Last Dance is incredible.
Yeah.
I agree.
Nuts how good that is.
Well, you know what? Go ahead, Woz. No, you go ahead.
Well, no, it's nostalgia porn, right? And
definitely.
It plays on somebody like me who in 1998 was 11 years old and still was, I wasn't jaded. And so I still believed in things like superheroes and perfect people. And Michael Jordan was all of that, right? Like this want to be like Mike. It sounds cliche and corny now, but back then, no, literally, like the idea that I would smoke or drink or do drugs or do any of that stuff, like while being a hooper, I was like, I can't smoke weed. Michael Jordan doesn't do that. Like literally, like, of course your parents and all of these people always tell you, do this, do that. No, like for me, it was like, nah, Mike did this, that, and the third to become a great hooper. That's how you do it, right? Like you saw Mike as a deity. And for me to like sort of transport myself back in time into a time when I was just a young, bushy-tailed 11-year-old just obsessed with the NBA. For that alone, I'm thankful.
Yeah, someone once told me that nostalgia is the most powerful force in the universe after compound interest. And this was like a nostalgia shot of heroin into your veins, like it was amazing. And the whole time, the thing that I couldn't stop thinking about while watching it was how the 90s were such a time where there was much more of a monoculture, like the internet really shattered kind of the idea of a monoculture.
Yeah.
But this event, The Last Dance, as a media event in the middle of the pandemic has felt in a way like one of those rare unifying things. Like everyone has watched it. It dominates the conversation for weeks. Like it kind of brings back that phenomenon of the water cooler. Like, the next day at work, everyone is talking about whatever happened the previous night on television. Right. Which has,
and a positive monoculture too,
yeah.
Like in terms of that, it's exciting and it's great to watch and it's making people get, re-engage with a lot of different things. But what I actually remembered, because I watched the Bulls when I was a kid too. We're all about the same age. And I played basketball and I was pretty good. And I remember, and I don't think that was like my main, like I probably had more like tennis fantasies or whatever, but I, anytime during the NBA or college season, I had the fantasy of whatever sport was on at the time, whether it was baseball or basketball or whatever. And I think even at that age, you already, you're like, yeah, that's like, I'm not going to be Michael Jordan, right? I'm not a crazy child. But I remembered, and I got this real wave of nostalgia because even though I follow Steve Kerr, watching him coach the Warriors, I remembered, I swear, and it really hit me Sunday night with the latest one. I was like, Steve Kerr was who I was watching because I was like, there's my plausible path.
Yeah, he's the white guy.
I was like, I could be that dude. He's lanky. He's got a good jump shot.
Also, man, and that's the thing about the doc too, is that,
But that's how powerful it is, though, that anybody could find, even with
I love that Steve Kerr admitted that his idol was John Paxson, the other white guy. That was like an incredible moment.
Steve Kerr tells the story, and I think it informs his coaching style. Like, he talks about what it's like to be a role player. He talks about like not thinking he was ever going to the NBA literally until he got there. And that informs sort of his worldview. But like, he's always been kind of realistic about the kind of player that he was or the kind of player that he could be. Like, he was like, I'm not going to even be a John Stockton. Not to say even like that, because John Stockton's clearly one of the greatest players of all time and all of this stuff. But Steve Kerr's self-awareness shone through. And the story that they told about his dad out in Lebanon, basically, died for this shit, this American shit, like literally died for it. And they didn't talk about it in the documentary either, but his grandfather did missionary work in the Middle East as well, like saved a bunch of Armenians during the genocide and all of that. Like, Steve Kerr comes from a crazy family, right? And you don't think about him as such. You think about him as this Southern California surfer dude, and he's got so much depth and all of that. I don't know. I just loved seeing all of this stuff. And
I love that footage. Can I just say that footage of Michael, and as Steve Kerr said, he's like, Michael's aware of the cameras at all times. He's constantly, so he's there, at the timeout.
Yeah, that was an incredible
cup
moment.
In his mouth, and he's like, got the cup in his mouth. He's like, I'm gonna find you, Steve. Like, and Steve Kerr's like, I'll be ready. Yes, I'll be ready. I'm there.
Just like an eager, like that's like a common thing these days, like earnest. Covering your mouth, he's like, yeah, Mike, you give me the call.
Put me in, coach.
Oh no, it's deeper than that. It's like, wait a second, like, Mike, trust me for the jumper.
The other thing that I noticed in the last two episodes that like really hit home, because this was like a thing that used to get talked about a lot, was the basketball was like a game for black people, but everyone in the crowd was white. And like the footage of the crowd in Indiana and in Utah, every single person is white going, you motherfuckers! Fuck you!
In a lot of ways, man, in this doc, because of the length of it, because of the way so many people were attracted to it in culture, gets compared to the OJ doc. And obviously this is much different, right? Like, OJ didn't executive produce the OJ doc. You understand? So OJ,
he was delusional enough, actually, at the end of watching that doc, I'm like, OJ would produce that same doc.
or he would produce, now let's find the real killers doc. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Dad, now you've been educated on racism. Let's find out who really did it.
But I just think it's cool that this doc, even though it's not as explicitly political, racial as the OJ doc was, which is like, the premise is like, if you dive headfirst into Uncle Tomery, you might become a mass murderer, right? Like, that's literally the premise.
That's the best description of that documentary I've ever heard.
That's the log line. That's the best log line I've ever heard.
If you embrace Uncle Tomery, like, you might become a killer, like, straight up and down. But like, that's what I think is cool about the MJ thing, is that race and American culture and politics is sort of the subtext of all of it, right? Like, you guys are like, they're not talking about the crowd in Indiana, but basketball is such like, it's so visceral. It's like, God damn, this is crazy. So like, I was struck by that Indiana shit, and Mike's kids finally coming on the dock to say that their mom told them, you're not going to Utah. Right. Y'all black asses ain't going to Utah. No.
But And then Obama at the end comes out and is like, well, let me be clear. MJ made it okay to be black around the world as an American. And that's his legacy, you know.
But I mean, Obama, you know, the thing that strikes me is that if you go back to that 2008 Obama campaign as an advertising project, I mean, they actually got one of the Bulls' main announcers, I think, for either Chicago radio or in stadium, but like a local institution, the same guy who'd bring the Bulls out. They got him to cut a similar version for Obama. They used the Bulls entrance music for Obama. And again, I think, yeah, and I actually think that model of, because it is a black man, it is a direct confrontation just because of literally what it is against a certain type of racism and a certain type of exclusion and a redefining of what quote unquote mainstream is. But I think, you know, Obama flows from Jordan in the sense that it's the visual is it. No, like question. There isn't like, you know, it's just like, right. And, you know, and here I am. And, you know,
right down the
advertising is, yeah.
The first episode that Barry shows up and he's like, yo, man, like you could be the shit as long as you don't rock the boat. Like He literally gives the game away. Like he says the quiet part loud. Like, you know, when we all remember his campaign in 2007 and 2008, where he literally would not acknowledge that he was black. He would, you know, use black church like sort of cadences. He'd talk about liking Jay-Z. He would tiptoe tap dance around the subject because he knew. And I think that was so cool, Mike, that you mentioned that in the doc, that they draw the direct line from Michael Jordan to Barack Obama. And of course, like, and you know, a lot of Mike's contributions culturally, and even if you want to call it politically, is that he is the first one. He is the one that you plastered on Wheaties and Gatorade and Hanes commercials. Like he's the first black athlete that became just a global.
What about those Nike numbers?
I mean,
that's insane. They anticipate I don't even remember. It was some type of like, hey, if we get $2 million of revenue, right? Oh, okay, here's 60.
Right.
In 1 year.
Yeah.
Before he's even won a championship.
Dude, and you think, and of course, Nike is one of those things, like something for me, why this shit resonates on so many levels. I remember, you know, having a conversation with a black woman friend of mine, and she was explaining to me why it's like, you know, the beauty standards is so fucked up, and like they tell us our hair doesn't look good, they tell us our skin tone and this and blah. And I just remember thinking to myself, shit, man, I always had Mike. Like these things never entered into my own psyche. Like the idea that you couldn't be cool or desirable or beautiful, like it never crossed my mind because Michael Jordan was everybody's idol. Like these are the things that he actually affected. And, you know, you think about to this day, my own obsession still with Nike and sneakers. It's all Mike. It's incredible, man.
You know, like everyone is talking about, well, I mean, because I think like, we've talked about it before, but this idea that Michael Jordan is like this, like kind of insane, ruthless psychopath type of guy who, like, you know, punched Steve Kerr in the face and
he felt real bad about it.
Bullied his teammates, and but you know, the feeling that I was getting watching this was that, you know, Mike, who himself doesn't seem like too capable of like personal joy, to be honest. Like it just doesn't seem like it seemed like winning was like a relief in a way. It wasn't like it was this thing that consumed him, but in a way it made me think like, you know, he had to like sacrifice, like it's like he had to sacrifice himself for us. Like, would we like think about the kind of the amount of entertainment and joy he brought to millions of other people by seeing someone so great operating at such a high level for such a long time, so consistently, it's almost like a sacrifice to the world that he gave us. You know, that he sacrificed his own joy, his own kind of personal thing for us in a way. I mean, obviously he's rich as hell and he's fine, but like,
though.
Yeah.
He says that. He's like, I tried to be a perfect person. I probably wouldn't have did it that way if I could go back to it. Like, he even has his own regrets about how he handled his sort of public persona. He's like, bro, like, trying to be perfect is crazy, yo. Like, that shit wears on you. Sorry, Mike, I cut you off, but he says
it's perfect. I was going to say something frivolous, but I'll make a serious point first, which is that that's also to me why we already talked about this, and some people didn't like it, but whatever. And Woz, you wrote a really good piece about this in The Athletic about like Michael Jordan's obligations to be political or not. And you and David Aldridge talked about it on Hoops Adjacent. But I think to me, it's kind of the same principle. I mean, obviously, just that there's a million criticisms okay, like Nike is the fuel of this incredible cultural breakthrough in the United States, and it's built on one of the most ruthless, abusive global supply chains.
Dude, they set the standard for that.
Standard for that. The 90s and global capitalism, and even the way like recognition and identitarian politics split from broader struggles, whether it be civil rights or economic justice, that all of that is there, but that's not a personal responsibility of one man whose primary contribution to the culture is, like you guys just said, just producing such joy that he's giving us joy 20 years later in the middle of a pandemic. The frivolous thing I want to say though, and I want your takes on this though, he takes everything personal.
Yeah.
And it is not just, he gets pissed at his teammates. Everything is a problem. And then it's hysterical because he's super easy on Dennis Rodman. He's just like, yeah, I guess he just wanted to get paid to go wrestle. Like, I love that everything is a problem except for Dennis.
Those things fit. Those things fit for me perfectly. Where it's like Jordan had to understand what you were fully, and then if he did, and he trusted you on that front, I don't think he cared about like the sort of showy displays of effort so much as just him knowing
in somewhere big.
And like I've seen that before with like other geniuses in sport. Like Maradona was the same way. Like he was the same way, that he demanded a lot of you, but he didn't demand more than what you were capable of giving, if that makes sense. It was like as long as you were doing as long as he understood what you could contribute and he could rely on that in those moments, then he was fine with everything else. You know what I mean? It's like they understand the sport at such a high level. Like Jordan was probably working out computations in his head that like for us we're just incapable. Like he's like, Luke Longley is like 3 inches to the left, and Steve Kerr is out on the wing, and Rodman's right here, like, and he can like in his mind he can see all the permutations of that, and as long as you don't fuck up that permutation, he's fine with all your other bullshit.
And you see it throughout the documentary, like, the stuff about Jordan and his teammates has been part of NBA and Jordan folklore for so long. Like, this stuff is not new to anybody who's really followed him. The stuff about punching Steve Kerr in the face, which they both acknowledged. Mike sort of liked him more afterwards, that Steve Kerr stood up to him and they had the fight, and it became, all right, this dude's not a punk. I actually messed with him. Bill Cartwright, they tell this famous story of Bill Cartwright when he first gets traded over there for Charles Oakley, and he sees Mike doing all the crazy shit, and Bill says, you try that with me, I'm going to punch you in your face. And it never happens. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Bill Cartwright's bigger than Steve Kerr.
Yeah. So there are these examples of this understanding. But Mike, you touched on something that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I think it speaks to something deeper within the public. My man Pablo Torre did, I think he was doing the Sports Reporters in it on his parting shot. He talked about how people are making a tick of Mike's into a feature. Like this idea that like you can't possibly call your teammates bitches and hoes and not win 6 championships in 6 tries. And Pablo's just like, nah, like I think you can win 6 championships in 6 tries and not call your teammates bitches and hoes, right? Yeah. And whatever. Like that didn't seem that crazy to me. But like and I have retweeted it online, and online, like all you see is people lining up to defend Mike's right to belittle his teammates, his coworkers, which I think it just speaks to like a certain bootlicker mentality that exists in America. It's like,
it's not
Mike is the king, whatever he does works.
It's a bootlicker thing, but it's also that people take, and what I got from the documentary, and now also I keep mentioning it, I'm rereading Sacred Hoops, I'm almost done with it, and obviously these are both like, they're not going to trash Mike, so that goes without saying. Course. These are frames, but one, that his relationship with his teammates to me is more complicated than was presented. 100%. So it wasn't like, oh no, he was actually a really nice guy, but also no, he wasn't just an asshole. And actually even the reasons he was an asshole changed from the beginning of his career of like, all right guys, watch this, to later in his career kind of being like, come on, like I need you, which is interesting. But to what you're saying was, and I just think there's a combination of hero worship in an embarrassing sense, and also that, and you see this with a million business idiots, that it's Steve Jobs and Michael Jordan are these huge permission givers for being an asshole. And it's like, it really, I could guarantee you that you don't have Mike's capacity. And as you said, there's, LeBron's pretty nice guy. Tim Duncan, by all accounts, is an incredibly nice guy.
Every one of his teammates love him.
Like, it's silly. And I think it's just a permission look.
Has big respect and universal admiration from his teammates? Tom Brady. People will be shocked by that, but his teammates, all of his teammates, speak glowingly of that dude. Like, straight up, everybody's like, he's the best teammate ever.
One of the things that I loved watching about the doc is,
and that's a white guy.
Yeah, that is a white guy. Trump supporter.
And that's a Yakubian. No, he got. I think his wife gave him a hard time about that. I think Giselle,
he's over it.
I think she pushed him back on that.
Tom Brady signed that petition to reinvestigate that case down in Georgia. He was one of the people. The NFL's like that committee that I forget what it's called, but the committee that the NFL players formed in conjunction with the league coming out of the Kaepernick shit, like they were spearheading the charge to reinvestigate those cops.
You mean the murder in
yes.
Yeah.
Tom Brady put his name on that shit, which is fucking
Trump has his like handful of woke white guys like Tom Brady and Rod Blagojevich. Like, Blagojevich got out of prison. He was just like, Donald Trump's the fucking greatest. And I learned about racism in there, and I'm going to fucking end
like
that.
American History X. Yo, Waz, one thing that I noticed was like one of the games in the final. I don't remember if it was one of the games in the finals or one of the games against Indiana that went to overtime. And the final score was like 82-79 after an overtime. It just made me realize like the different NBA era of like, how low scoring it was back then. Like Jordan was like putting up 40 points in like an 80-point game.
It's almost like a different. It's almost like you're watching something different. The amount of threes that these guys refuse to take, or even somebody like a Dennis Rodman who in today's game could only play center. He's their power forward. Like Ron Harper's not shooting at all, and like it's just a different game. The rules, like they still had the illegal defense rule in where you couldn't play zone like you can in today's game. It's just different, man. Yeah. Like the stuff that we were nostalgic for is games that ended 76-72.
I know, it's crazy.
That's halftime scores nowadays, like literally.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Nando, can you actually wait? I was going to say I want to get to a few other things, but we've talked about this before, actually, in two different ways. Nando, you and I have talked about the role of like Gulf money and Russian and just oligarch money and the future of sports. And Waz, from day one, you have been, not only have you connected the just like embarrassing racism of some fans, but also just the fact that people always forget. And they're privileged workers, absolutely, but they're workers. These are people who are
100%
punching a clock, having a job. And at the very beginning of the series, it's just not satisfactorily answered. Just the idea that maybe even not just the general manager himself, Jerry Cruz, but maybe even the owner, Reinsdorf, is just not into being outshined by his own team. No. And I just am thinking about that, like there's the economics of where all this stuff is going, which we got to put it in, but even just on that ultra petty level, that's wild.
Yeah, it's so interesting for me, for somebody who like basically I'm immersed in NBA culture 24/7, 365, right? And right now, so LeBron kicks off in 2010, what I would call the modern version of the NBA, where we cover this shit 365. We know who these guys are dating on Instagram. It happened once he did the decision to go to Miami, right? Like that's like basically the big bang of the modern NBA. Right. And, people have dubbed that the player empowerment movement, where literally LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh decide in the room together, not the billionaires, not the commissioner, and decide to make this paradigm shifting decision, like on their own, unilaterally, no permission, no fucks given. This is the player empowerment movement. These are the players basically understanding what their influence is and wielding it unabashedly. And at the time, I remember it. Well, first it was panned, and then sports reporters were smart enough to look closely at the people who were panning it and saying, hold on, maybe this is actually cool, right? And it got praised, and then we've come around now 10 years later to an idea of like, maybe the fans don't like this shit. Maybe like it is true that the players in the NBA are way more powerful than their counterparts in the MLB or the NFL, or even like, big time soccer out in Europe. But maybe we shouldn't highlight it because, the optics of the NBA being what it is, like maybe we don't like the idea that players are running the show. And then I watched this doc, and Jerry Krause and Jerry Reinsdorf.
We want the players running the show.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and like I think it's fascinating. It's fascinating that Steve Kerr, who played for Phil Jackson, who like we talked about, like is like this kind of very evolved human being, players coach and all stuff. And Steve Kerr, who now is the coach of the Warriors. Do you remember what was when he let the Warriors players coach themselves for a half? In a game, and they call their own plays and stuff, and he just kind of sat back. That's a total Phil Jackson thing. But the backlash from the fans to that was insane. It was like, well, the coaches make the decision.
Well,
and it's like, well, they won the game, first of all.
The crazy thing, Nando, it came from the other team's fans. They felt they were showing them up.
Right.
It was a sign of disrespect that you would let Steph Curry make decisions on a basketball court on his own. Like,
was that really that disrespectful?
Like, exactly.
Those assholes that Steph Curry was.
But no, seriously, plays. Mike, though, like it's
that was a huge thing.
You brought up. It's beautiful what you brought up, because I'm like, Michael Jordan, universally accepted and respected as a basketball deity. Jerry Krause is overruling him.
Yeah, overruling. What? And Phil, and even if you want to go to like the mediating role, like even Phil Jackson.
Yep.
Like let's be practical, okay? Like people have got their, whether it's the racial dynamics, whether it's just the whatever way you resent the players, you want to see them still be coached or whatever. Like Phil Jackson showed up too, and I don't know. That's just wild. That even, and the way Reinsdorf at the end is kind of like, whoa, what do you say? Huh? You want to do it again? It's just like it's also a good reminder to me, because as much as I try to look at the economics of things or whatever, there is just a part of this that's just like, okay, any rational person would break the bank to sign a 1-year re-up on all of these people. You're going to beyond make your money back. The people of the city are going to love you. Like, and then if it does disband the year after that, you're not going to be hated. Like,
they could have doubled ticket prices.
It just makes every type of sense. But no.
Yeah.
I don't like that Phil and Mike get the attention. I mean, that's really what it. And again, and you pointed out early, Woz, and it makes, because by the end, I felt kind of bad for Cruz, because like Charlemagne, I heard Charlemagne actually say like that Jerry Cruz is just meeting his insecurity every day. Like it just so happens that this man who is like unusually short, not athletic, and all of this, that his talent is for scoping talent in a game that he can have no physical presence in. That's a very hard ego dynamic. That would take, like, he should have been sitting and meditating with Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
But
like
by the end of it, though, you're like, and Waz, you said this in the beginning. You were just like, yeah, like that's the owner using Cruz to shield himself.
100%. That's and that's what you get to do when you're a freaking billionaire, right? Like you literally get to hire a human meat shield. Like I don't have to take any of the hits. I can just literally tell this guy to say something and he will say it in public. He will get all the backlash, even though I'm the final decision. I own this team, right? And that's Jerry Krause's role. And again, of course, Jerry Krause has an ego and he's like, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm the one that makes this thing tick. Like even after, I think it's after the 1997 championship or the 96 one, where Jerry's in the locker room, Jerry Krause that is, he's getting champagne poured on him, all of this stuff. Oh, man. And he talks about the Chicago Bulls is just a great organization. From the front office down to the owner's box, just a great organization. Then he goes, and the players are cool too, but such a great organization. And
that's a rough one. That is a rough one.
Are you crazy,
that is a rough
bro?
one. That's a rough one.
What are you even talking about? What are you even talking about, bro? Like, not even George Steinbrenner would say something like that at the peak of his power. He would never say, oh, man, go to talk about Mo Rivera, Derek Jeter, Andy Pettit, secondarily to himself and the money he spent. He's like, no, like, I spent my money wisely, but these cats are great. Like Jerry Krause is just clueless in that sense.
And the best, I'm a Heat fan, and the Heat is a good organization. Like they've been very good for a long time. Pat Riley understands that they're only as good as like how good their players are. Like, you know what I mean? Like Pat Riley has had he won 15 games one year. When he had awful players. Like the organization means nothing if you don't get the best players, and he always understands that and always goes after the best players that are available. That's the bottom line. You don't win in the front office, like it's just, you need the players on the court. Like I remember, when in the NFL, like there was like this kind of coaches revolution in a sense that like after the West Coast offense and the Niners and stuff, and George Seifert won the Super Bowl with the Niners. And then he went to Carolina to start their franchise, and he went 1-15. You know what I mean? Because he didn't have Joe Montana, and he didn't have a good. He didn't have a good organization. Yeah, exactly.
Guys, can we? I want to talk about Venezuela in a minute. No, this is great, but can we just do something that's really petty for a minute?
Yeah. For sure.
All right. This is so. Traditionally, if you want to be somebody's vice president, you want the nod. You have to pretend that you're not thirsting over it.
Yeah.
And if we look at all the other people that are in play, Kamala Harris, she's getting her name on some, progressive-ish legislation. She's getting back to performing in the Senate, which actually has a perform. I thought she'd be a more effective candidate based off of her presentation in the Senate, which is very effective presentationally. Obviously, we've got the governor of Michigan. On one hand, she's got motherfucking militia freaks threatening her life and everything else. But on the other hand, she's definitely having a media moment. Elizabeth Warren is actually a little thirsty. Elizabeth Warren with it. Here's the thing. But Elizabeth Warren can't be but that because she's not a good politician. But nobody. Stacy Abrams has thirsted more for this than anybody else has thirsted for a job as a vice president. And also just like Stacy Abrams, she's given us permission to stop, she ran for governor of Georgia. It was great that she focused on voter disenfranchisement. And that's really good. And that's about it since she left.
Yeah.
She also likes Ayn Rand.
Right. And if you ask like the average white liberal who's like, oh, Stacey Abrams is great, you know, like Stacey Abrams is great. You know, like you know what I'm talking about?
Love that. Yeah, I know a lot of people that you're talking about.
Well, like if you ask them to tell you why they think she's great, like specifically, like they would not be able to tell you that.
They would tell you.
Oh, she just like all her work in wherever she's from.
She does.
The work that she does is great. I love it. It's great. She's great.
What about she got some pretty key programs in Georgia? No, I don't. Well, maybe. But the point is just, I mean, yeah, she yes. I mean, it's just a complete substitution of brand identity for a policy set. Anyways, this is funny because this is a collision between ambition and a senile old man. In real time.
In this with a question to Joe Biden, because Stacey Abrams is here because Joe Biden invited Stacey Abrams to be here. And so, Mr. Vice President, do you have an announcement to make? Is this an audition? Is there, what is the reason that you decided it's time for me to get on TV with Stacey Abrams?
Well, because Stacey Abrams has done more to deal with the fair vote and making sure there is a fair vote than anybody. And she has a great capacity to explain things and to lay out exactly why it's going to be so critically important in this election. This president's already said when they put in the stimulus package the Congress first passed money to provide for mail-in ballots, he already said, I'm not for that. If we do that, no Republican will ever win, or something to that effect. He's made it clear. This is a guy who said he wants to defund the post office from being able to deliver ballots. I mean, so Stacey knows what she's doing, and she's an incredibly capable person.
You know what I love about that, honestly, is that actually I made that senile old man crack, which I should, whatever. It's become, I'm not going to do those jokes anymore. They're too cliche at this point. But by Biden 2020 standards, not only is he skipping her, he gave a very cogent answer with very correct. He absolutely is right about the post office. He's on point in the criticisms. And just, I got to say, on one level, I feel a little bad because just on a human level, that level of disappointment you don't like to see in anybody. But that was not a VP. Like, I want my VP to be able to, the stiff upper lip there, not the like, I'm smiling at something I think might happen. And then while he makes the case against the president, I'm looking like I just got like horrible family news.
And Lawrence O'Donnell thought he was going to get the big scoop, like Lawrence O'Donnell was like, he's going to announce the VP on my shitty MSNBC show.
He was actually super thirsty.
He was the thirstiest one of all.
Like, oh, are you gonna? It's like when you bring your girl.
I might get renewed for a season.
Right. It's like when you bring your girl to a family function and your family members are like, so are you going to pop the question? It's like, yo, chill. Like, what's wrong with you? I just came here to have some turkey. Relax.
I thought you were about to say it's like at a family function and you're waiting for them to say how wonderful she is. And it's Biden. And he's just like, Woz, if you're happy, she sure does do a good job. I guess.
I'll say this about Stacey Abrams, man. Like, I think what people don't understand oftentimes is that if you want to get by, if you want to get on, you do have to be ambitious. You do have to play the game. But those who are the best at it have some level of finesse. Like, you have some facility with like being at least marginally slick about what your goals and your aims are without just coming off as being extremely desperate. Like, let's face it, like, obviously, she's already sold out. She's already sold her soul to the Democratic Party establishment and who she wants to be down with, who she wants to align herself with, because she views them as the people with the steam, with the winning energy behind them. Cool. She made a political calculation, and that's what she's now doing. She's just not good at it. She's just straight up not good at it.
She also has the Pete Buttigieg problem in that she can't win statewide office in Georgia, so her only path to any sort of political power is through the presidency. And since she hasn't won anything, she can't win the presidency. So she's just trying to latch on to the rotting Biden corpse, and that would immediately launch her to national prominence. But yeah, it's the same thing.
What I find funny though is I remember in the beginning of this whole cycle, there was a story being reported that Joe Biden was considering naming Stacey Abrams as his vice president, and people rightly pointed out that unless that conversation had been had, that was extremely presumptuous and egotistical of the Biden campaign to speak on behalf of another prominent national figure, in this case, Stacey Abrams. And I remember Stacey Abrams went out on, and that was true. And then other people people ran it too far. Like I remember people starting to write columns like Stacey Abrams hasn't decided herself whether she wants to run for president. I was like, all right, him presuming to speak on her behalf as VP is sexist, arrogant, and ridiculous, and saying that she's a viable presidential campaign is delusional and nonsense. Like, let's chart a third way between both of these extremes here. But she went on The View, and she basically, she popped some lines off at him, and then it's just like, and it's like you can't even just create some durability out of that. Like it's like, okay, and sure enough, like it would have been better if she just agreed and said. And Biden would have wrapped things up much more quickly if he ran with her as VP in the primary, right? But the other thing that I just want to say real quick, we'll get off of this in a second. But why on earth, whether it's Mehdi Hasan writing these embarrassing columns calling Elizabeth Warren to be VP, I'm talking purely politically here. Purely politically, I definitely think it's very important to beat Donald Trump, 100%. So and it's already, we're not having Bernie, so we're not doing anything good. So so we're purely in a horse race conversation. Why do people who are the most freaked out, all they do is tweet all day and you're not going to support the Democrat and feel so comfortable promoting, like you have obvious talent here. You have Gretchen Whitmer, you have Kamala Harris, you have Tammy Baldwin, I would say in some respects. Yeah. You have a Deb Haaland who would be out of the box, Native American congresswoman from New Mexico who's got real talent. You've got a couple of other people like this. Elizabeth Warren, who's unpopular in Massachusetts, who has a constituency with the national media, and Stacey Abrams, who's not performed well at all in the vetting process and doesn't have a national constituency really because she doesn't hold national office. Like, why are people who are the most freaked out about this being the most unserious about this pick?
Well, I mean,
I think in the media. I think in the media there's this idea of Warren as a progressive candidate, and we've done that on Woke Bros 1,000 times, whatever. Warren's not a real.
I'm talking about her electorally, though.
No, yeah. but that's what I'm saying. Whether she is or if she isn't, she got blown out the water. Electorally in amongst that group of people who the three of us on this call would consider ourselves to be amongst. So she got
blown out of the water of every group of people.
Well, that's what
I'm trying to say. like this idea.
What are we talking about?
Like if we're being strategic, this idea that she's gonna, hippify the ticket. Like she's gonna make the ticket just a flaming liberal ticket. Is ridiculous in the sense that nobody believes that about her.
Yeah.
Like the people who actually care about those politics don't believe that about her. So what's the point? And like, what's the point? Like she doesn't have those stripes, so it makes no sense whatsoever.
I mean, yeah, the in theory argument for Warren is that she would stop the bleeding with potential Bernie voters who feel burned and won't show up to vote or whatever. But that's insane because Bernie voters hate Elizabeth Warren more than anyone. You know what I mean? Like that was the whole thing that happened in the primary. And the thing about vice president is that the vice president pick traditionally has more you basically just have a bunch of downsides, like there's no they never cause like an electoral groundswell. They might sometimes help in their home state, which I think is a fair calculus to do this time around.
Palin caused a different type of swell.
Well, yeah, but Palin, I would argue that Palin may have
fixation on right-wing women and continue.
Right.
Right-wing white women.
But I think Palin's a good example of someone who probably brought a lot of liabilities to a McCain campaign overall.
100%.
But other than that, people don't vote for vice president. People vote for president. And there is this like kind of narrow consideration of whether they can deliver their home state, which is not even guaranteed. Like Al Gore didn't deliver didn't win his home state.
And then Warren is from Massachusetts. What the hell is she doing?
Exactly. So Warren's from Massachusetts, so that doesn't matter. Plus, there's a Republican governor, and we'll replace like her with the Senate. I mean, I've heard some arguments that there's probably a way to get around that shit, but whatever. I'm not even entertained.
It's not. Yeah,
it's not even worth it. But like someone like
seconds of breath.
Yeah, but so it seems to me that the obvious thing is to get someone from the Midwest. Like, just do that. Get someone from Michigan. Get someone from. That's the most obvious kind of like 101. Maybe from the Sun Belt. I agree, because that's like the ascendant of Democratic Party.
Deb Haaland to me, because actually she like, and to me, I also like that she is progressive-ish, but in a way that people don't have big delusions about. Like, she's just a solid.
Yeah.
Connected liberalish Democrat. She'd make history as a Native American woman. Like, I don't know. People just
Tammy Baldwin. I mean, Tammy Baldwin has
Tammy Baldwin's an obvious pick. Yeah,
progressive credentials, and would have been a good VP for Bernie pick.
She was these are two of my. I think Haaland or Baldwin would have been good for Bernie too.
Yeah. So yeah, and like Tammy Baldwin, like if Biden like croaks, a month into his administration, like Tammy Baldwin is like.
That's a big part of
someone we can work with. I feel like
that's the thing about certain people on the left's fantasies about, well, Joe is really old and he's a caretaker candidate, and
he looks like he's got like 8 months to live.
Well, which are all fair characterizations, but like you don't get to be cute that way. Like, you have to be strategic. Like, this dude doesn't have it in the bag. Like, if there's a way to create any sort of advantage by your Veep pick, that's the shit that you go with. Like, I don't want to hear.
That's what's driving me crazy is the people who are the most. Like, I think you guys and I think we're like in a third position where it's like, look, we're not bullshitting, we're not lying about how disgusting the situation is, but at the same time, we're also not being delusional. Like, yeah, vote tactically. Definitely get Trump out of office. That's obvious. It's necessary. It's smart. And so therefore, try to be a little fucking clinical. And the people who are on every single day blaming Bernie people, freaking like one brother's like, the Bernie Sanders, the podcasts are going to cost this. And then Donald Trump's going to become Hitler. And then in the next sentence, they're like, let's pick a vice president
Stacy Abrams
sucks at politics, who brings nothing electoral. Like, it just drives me fucking crazy. It's like people being like, "You're not serious about the Bulls winning."
Yeah,
Terry Crews is more important than Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan.
It's funny. I think if these people were smarter, if they were like, I would have more respect if people who consider themselves to be lefties and cared about winning were, because. Honestly, I hear better conjecture from normies. Like my girl, for instance, is like, she just watched the Michelle Obama doc and was like, you think they would pick Michelle? I'm like, I think that would actually work practically, as far as like getting the right people excited about this shit.
Honestly,
that shit would work.
Remains to be seen, but 100% more than the things, 100%. I mean, Michelle Obama versus Elizabeth Warren. Let's be real.
Oh, come on. No,
of course, it's a better pick. I mean, that's just a question of whether or not
like, at least
she wants. No, exactly. And then people who do this for a living are just like, what's going to really light people up to vote during a pandemic is Elizabeth Warren's fucking, rider she put on a bill that didn't pass to make it easier to leverage credit card payments with a library card. I would love to watch Biden do the same thing to Warren. Like Lawrence on there, like, you got an announcement? And Warren just been like, gee golly, here's the thing. And then Biden just like,
no, I could just see like,
you're the one who knows about credit cards.
No, Biden. Great. It's the opposite. Biden, like some Biden advisor is going to make the case for Warren, and he'll be like, that mouthy broad, she wouldn't shut up. She wouldn't shut up when I was trying to pass the bankruptcy bill. Yeah, fucking, she's got a mouth on her. She didn't shut up.
She's got a mouth on her. Back when I was trying to help out MBNA.
Yeah,
Nando, your friends in Miami.
Yeah,
I say that apropos of nothing. I just wanted to ask you about latest news on the Venezuela situation. We got to talk about that for a couple of minutes. This is incredible. This
it's incredible. Coup. It's incredible. I mean, the latest thing is that it looks like Juan Guaido, the Venezuelan opposition leader, U.S. backed, kind of incredible grifter, just absolutely delusional guy. It looks like his U.S. backers are thinking about making a change because this guy is too dumb to be our guy. It's just too much.
They're recognizing that the front office isn't going to do a coup. You need a solid player.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that they're not going to go anywhere. With this guy.
So Silvercore is this mercenary firm.
Yeah.
It's not even this is a major global problem. We got these firms operating all across the world, particularly in Africa. They're instruments of U.S. aggression abroad. And Venezuela has been a target of U.S. foreign policy since at least 2002 and hyper aggressive under Trump. Massive sanctions, trying to use the courts to essentially declare a bounty on Nicolas Maduro's head. I mean, this is so ruthless, aggressive, pure criminal U.S. empire. And at the same time, by all appearances, and Pompeo is, he's not even really denying a U.S. role, frankly.
No.
I mean, he's saying stuff like, well, we'll talk about how maybe another time we'll talk about who funded this or whatever. You had this firm, Silvercore, that has been trying to get contracts to guard schools from school shootings in the past, that somehow got, I think it was through a connection with Richard Branson to help do security for one of these
the concert on the border.
Yeah, these pro-coup concerts at the border. And now these fucking idiots went into Venezuela on fishing boats.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I won't play this because I don't care. I just don't take pleasure in any, of course, this is criminal. This is contract murder. Obviously, the Venezuelans need to arrest them, protect themselves, whatever. We'll see what happens. But I don't wish ill on anybody. But there's this clip of one of these Silvercore guys who got arrested. And through the translator, the Venezuelan is asking him in heavily accented English, what's the operation? And the guy's telling him, he's not denying it. He's yeah, basically, come in here, get on the boats, get out. I don't know. Again, it's just fucking insane as they're saying this. Take over Caracas, bag Maduro, other high-value targets, take them to the airport. It's insane. It's like a Michael Bay movie, which I know we'll get to in a second. And then the guys, the Venezuelan is did you know that this is illegal? And the guy's just now I am aware that it is illegal. Yeah, did you know that violating our sovereignty and coming in here to fucking kill our leadership to install some dope that just says he's the president and is recognized by all of the world's imperial interests that want our oil and to get rid of our social achievements, and that to just come here and try to and this dude's just yeah, no, now I get it.
Guys, we talked about this on Woke Bros. I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I can't remember now, but we're talking about the ramping up of making China the new boogeyman, right? And that's getting ramped up. We're not at, Bay of Pigs or even Iran-Contra level Cold War stuff with Russia yet with China, but we're ramping up there. What I just see here in Venezuela is that the CIA's heart's just not into this one, right? You gotta figure these guys were willing to sell weapons to the mullahs in the Middle East, right? To get money to fund the Contras. They were willing to run crack to get money to the Contras. That was an operation. These guys had their hearts in it. They were no, this is life or death for us. Obviously, what's going on in Venezuela it's like, I don't even know, man. It's like how some people might treat like a hoop game with their little nephew or something. It's like, all right, man, I get it. You just figured out how to make a free throw. You're 6 years old, but I'm not really paying attention to this. Like, they just not into it for real, man.
I mean, one of the reasons why they're not into it is because Venezuela is like incredible, much more powerful than a lot of these other. Like, they don't realize how people don't realize like just the Venezuelan military is like very large and the country is very well armed, and it's just not. It's not like something that it's not like some flimsy regime that you can just topple in 2 seconds. Like, they are incredibly.
No, if we invaded Venezuela, that could be like the biggest catastrophe that would happen.
Oh, it would. Millions of people would die.
But also, people need to think about the other thing too. That like, you know, that's like, what is the lesson of that? Like, I think we all would prefer the Lula approach. But then,
he got out. He got thrown in jail.
And then in the Venezuela, the people are, like this Venezuelan government, you know, strikes deals with the military. Yeah, right. Because that's how they keep from getting deposed.
Right. That's why Iran wants a nuclear weapon.
That's why Iran should,
you think someone's gonna fucking off the head of their military command like Soleimani, like we did earlier this year, if they had a nuclear weapon? No way.
What's the whole world's big lesson, right? Across the board, from North Korea to Libya to Iran. But I don't know. It's ridiculous. And also, we got to talk more about this JJ Rondon guy, who's this Miami-based political consultant who's worked for right-wing campaigns across Latin America, has been accused of all sorts of shit. We'll talk about this.
The crazy thing about this Rondon guy,
he's the conduit for the deal, right? Talk about it.
Well, he's
admitted to it, right? He's literally said it.
I think that's what's most surprising about all this is that he's just like openly talking about it. Like, he doesn't care, you know, like he's not even like hiding the fact that he brokered this insane deal. You know, he's talking to the media nonstop. Like, he answers the phone when people call and he talks. Like, it just speaks to the brazenness of this all. Like, they think that this is normal behavior, that they're just like doing something that's worthy and good. It's just, that's how their mentality is. Like, they don't care. But yeah, this guy's like an unbelievably shadowy and dangerous figure who just kind of sits atop his perch in a Miami condo and just takes money from Venezuelan oligarchs who are living in Aventura and Sunny Isles, and uses it to hire psychopaths like this Justin Goudreau guy in Silvercore to maybe depose Nicolas Maduro. Like, it's totally insane and brazen the way they're doing it.
How are your Venezuelan homies in Miami taking all of this?
They all love. I mean, they all like everyone in Miami wants Maduro out, like, at all costs. Like, they don't. That's like they don't think beyond that. You know, like, whether it, like, even if like Trump like sends in troops, like, they'll be like, yes, that's a good idea. We should do it. I mean, like, I don't like Trump, but you know, we should do that. And what I worry about, like, this insane kind of hilarious coup attempt is that the U.S., like, because there's Americans involved, that the U.S. might do like the Grenada thing and be like, well, we got to get our boys back. You know, we got to get our boys. You know, we can't leave our boys behind.
That's really scary. And it's disgusting. Look, Grenada, Panama, those are two of the big U.S. crime. I mean, just gangsterism, particularly Grenada.
Yeah.
But what's particularly Grenada, that's just pure. That is like, I don't even know what the analogy is for that. Just rampant criminality. But people need to wrap their heads around that Venezuela is not, I mean, everybody I think basically knows it's not Grenada, but it's not Panama.
No.
It's not
even Nicaragua.
It's not Nicaragua. It's not, I mean, this would be such a catastrophe. And I think you're right. Like, that is the scary part of this. And it's the only part of it, honestly, that even makes any kind of sense if you wanted to give some of these agencies any kind of credit, that this is so stupid and so ridiculous that it makes the Venezuelan government look good and coherent, right? And that the only play here is some type of, you got our people. I don't know.
Like a Casus Belli to get them out. Yeah. You know, it's just, it's crazy. It's a very, you know, it's depressing. No one cares, you know, like, we think it like you look at Iran Contra, right? And, which you mentioned, and look back at that time, and the Democratic Party, as like weak and feckless as they always have been, they were like calling congressional hearings to investigate the Reagan administration.
John Kerry exposed global CIA, BCCI, cocaine trafficking networks, man.
How is
John Kerry did that?
That is literally unimaginable for like Nancy Pelosi to like open an inquiry into this insane thing and see.
No, Chuck Schumer would be like, that 2% of each cocaine sale that funds the death squads will go towards a highway refurbishment in Long Island and Nassau County. And that furthermore, if Donald Trump wants to profit from cocaine sales to the Venezuelans,
he bar his family from profiting directly.
3 years after he's president, and his immediate family 6 months.
Yeah.
Mike, have you ever watched the Talented Mrs. Maisel?
No, tell me.
Every single character on that show talks like exactly like your Chuck Schumer impersonation, and it's fucking fantastic. Oh, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I'm thinking about the Talented Mr.
Ripley.
Yeah, but it's Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, though. Sorry.
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Thank you for the assist.
To Gwyneth Paltrow, the Nubian queen.
My milk of magnesia.
Oh my god! So guys,
Gwyneth Paltrow. Every time she comes up on anything that I do, I have to bring up my favorite Gwyneth Paltrow moment, which was during the Watch the Throne tour. Her and Chris Martin, back when they were together, are famously very close friends with Jay-Z and Beyonce, right? And they happened to be in Paris when the Watch the Throne tour stopped in Paris. And this is around the time that Jay and Kanye were doing this performance art thing where they would perform the freaking song Niggas in Paris like a ridiculous amount of times. Like, whatever, it was their biggest song at the time. It's completely kind of mediocre in retrospect, but whatever.
Can I say, do you guys remember how Francois Hollande, when he was running for president, I think in 2012, his campaign, and it was an official video, I think it's been scrubbed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like good, just B-roll politician footage, but it was definitely like, all right, this is like, we're going to mobilize the Paris suburbs with the North African immigrants and young people. It's just Hollande campaigning with that song unedited. But anyway, go ahead.
Like, again, and this is similar to that, so Michael. Yes. Like, and so she tweets from the stage, and I quote, because the song is called Niggas in Paris. She tweets, "Niggas in Paris for real."
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
Oh my god! Like naively, unironically.
That song, that's like the best troll of white people. Like it's like, and burning up the charts is words in Paris.
Bruh, like,
the number one song in America.
I remember reading that tweet and just losing my mind, just laughing hysterically, like, this white woman can't be serious. Like, and she did it like, no, but for real.
But for real.
Get it? It's niggas in Paris. Like, doing niggas in Paris. Like, it was just too good. That's the only thing I think about when I think of Gwyneth Paltrow.
That story is a controversial style of play for the big leagues.
Yeah.
I love it. That's hilarious. Jesus. And then she was like, all right, I'm going to found Goop now.
Right.
Guys, let's do this again in June, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah. I love it. I love it. The Roke Bros assemble. We're definitely going to do this again in another. Obviously, you can catch us every single week on the Bomb feed, BOMM, Black Opinions Matter, on the Count the Dings Network on iTunes. That's the way you can catch us and not miss a single week. But
and make sure you guys subscribe to that.
Definitely. We have a lot of fun, as you can see, but we're going to do this again, the crossover, in another 3 or 4 weeks or so, because this is a lot of fun. We need to do more of this. Obviously, you can check out Waz at Count the Dings and The Athletic. You can check out Nando also at The Athletic, where he writes about soccer. You can check out Nando. You see him on TYT, where he does political commentary, the indispensable political commentary. And also, Waz and I have both been a guest on a very good podcast called Pot It Out, which is Nando's entourage viewing podcast, which is sort of like the Gwyneth Paltrow story.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, man, it's hard times in the quarantine. Just everyone should just kick back, fire up Entourage, listen to the intro theme song, and just dive into a simpler time.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I love you guys. Thanks so much.
Man, love you too, man. Later,
Take
guys.
it easy.
All right. Be safe. Talk to you guys soon. You guys there?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Here's what we're gonna do. Let's I'm gonna do an illicit mini history of permanent normalized trade relations with China in the post game, guys. You're gonna have to become a patron to catch it, as well as the reading group with Daniel Bessner and some other stories we got to get to, and Joshua Kahn, Russell. But now, I hope you're digesting that. I hope that was a lot of fun for everybody. We're definitely going to do that again in another couple of weeks. And you guys, we should try. I know it looks visually awkward, but you guys should try to jump in on that.
Well, I wanted to jump in with that when everyone was praising Tom Brady for a second, because have you seen what he's done recently?
Oh, he's selling like a health supplement for a corona.
He's selling like a $50 coronavirus cure of multiple.
Well, you know me. You know that I'll defend something like that.
Too good.
I love it.
No, I love Tom Brady. Baby. I love Tom Brady's woo stuff. They used that, like Bill Belichick used to have to kick his team doctor out of the locker rooms at the Patriots facility. Because I don't know if you ever watched like on cinema at the cinema, but they're like Dr. San. He has like this crazy naturopath doctor. Anyways, Tom Brady had some guy who was like giving people all these supplements and stuff. And Bill Belichick was like, this guy's not a team doctor and he can't just give
That's awesome.
After the game.
Oh, man, I don't know why that cracks me up so much. All right, David, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, it's gem time, everybody. David Griscom, go.
Well, on the other side of that, I mean, like, is there any feeling right now that this coronavirus crisis is over anywhere in the United States? No,
sir.
Well, why is it that
in this crisis?
Now, one of the largest grocery store chains in the country, Kroger, has now announced that they're going to be cutting their what they called hero pay, which was an extra $2 an hour for workers who are at the front lines of this coronavirus scandal. So not only is Kroger a corporation that has been doing exceptionally well before the crisis and even more so after the crisis, because primarily that's where the majority of Americans are spending their money right now. Those are for the most part, one of the few viable businesses in the coronavirus pandemic. And on whose labor is that built on? These people who they're cutting their $2 an hour pay. Now, not only is that happening, but this last week, there was this big story, and shout out to Sarah Jaffe at Dissent for covering this, where Kroger was actually sending very threatening letters to workers who had taken sick pay, who might have been ill with coronavirus or whatever, saying that they had accepted, this extra pay and that they were now going to be expected to pay it back. And they had options of, different payment plans they could go into with this massive corporation. And anyways, very frightening and threatening letters that they're sending out to people. Now, as of today, just as we went on, Kroger has now announced that those were sent in error. But obviously, it's not like somebody pressed the button.
It's like somebody wrote a whole thing, created a different plan with different payback options. Yeah, there's just this giant error.
We pushed the act like a corporation button by accident.
Obviously it's because everyone has been, rightfully very frustrated and on social media and across the country, people have been pushing back against them. Now, I want to add, Kroger is not instituting their extra $2 an hour that they have given workers since the beginning of the coronavirus. Instead, they're giving something that they're calling a thank you pay, which is a one-time bonus of $400 for full-time workers and $200 for part-time workers that will be paid in 2 installments over the next month. Right?
Don't get too generous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I mean, as you're cutting people's pay, you're giving them, this kind of, paltry amount compared to
people are risking their lives every day in the middle of a pandemic that has been completely unmanaged, that has been accelerated by the federal government, by the Trump administration, and with no public health safety net, no social provision for people to stay at home, which they need to during this time. And then people who, and the reason I'm adding all of that is because that is the context that makes being an essential worker even more risky. Mm-hmm. Like, in other words, if there was an umbrella of protection around people, that might make people who are innately the most vulnerable because of their job a bit safer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, this reminds me of, I was watching McMillions on that Hulu documentary about how the McDonald's
the Monopoly game
was thing.
That's
and
fun.
It's a pretty interesting documentary. I mean, there's a little bit too much glorification of the feds, which is annoying. But
yes. What
it makes me think of is like business and the mafia is kind of the same thing, because those winners they weren't actually making that much money, because you realize you get $1 million, but that's over 20 years, and then you get a huge bunch of that as taxes, then you have to give it to the criminal enterprise. But at the end of it, I'm like, I don't feel bad for the people. I feel bad for, I think the whole it's a scam basically, and like that we can only give people $400 and have to space it out over 2 months. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the whole point. It
is like McMillions actually.
It's totally. Like nothing. Like you get nothing out of it.
And the fact that, like, I would just add that something when I was researching for this segment today was, it's really interesting if you type in "thank you pay" on Kroger, right? You'll get some like real in-depth studies like you saw, in Dissent and in other organizations. But there's the very classic kind of like local news story, right? Where they pretty much just copy and paste from the press release. So instead of it being, hey, Kroger's threatening employees and cutting their extra $2 an hour, it's like, wow, Kroger's giving all of their employees an extra bonus, right? And it's really...
There's a whole network of PR shops that help make those stories so. And then that overlaps with the other problem, which is the total gutting of the news industry in this country and monopolization. But I mean, I talked to my buddy Luke Mayville, who's, that great academic and political organizer in Idaho. And when he was working on Medicaid expansion there, and he's just like, think about under-resourced newspapers across the state, and the fact that a Koch brothers operation has paid political operatives across even pretty rural and remote areas. Mm-hmm. Just in terms of bandwidth. I mean, what are you going to do? Of course, Kroger can place all sorts of positive PR, and then not even to mention, you go to talk about local news. Well, Sinclair, an extreme far right media monopoly.
I need to figure out this mute thing. But anyway, there was a 538 article about how like some landlords, like most landlords only own like 10 properties or less, and it's like 10 properties, guys.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of properties.
that's a lot. I like that. That's really interesting, because it's like people are always looking for, and there are examples, but I love how people are always looking for like, no, this is like a retired, old couple, and they own like an extension on their house that they rent. Those people do exist, and I'm willing to put them in a different category. But that's really great to be just like, this person owns multiple properties across a metropolitan area, like many of us.
No, it's absolutely delusional. I would just say, like, just to wrap up, or to point out to people, going forward, those, like, obviously, the 3 million workers who work at these grocery stores are crucial and essential. And yes, they need your appreciation, but we also need to be, supporting them, not only in their fights for pay, but their fights for health protection. As you're seeing lots of states now roll back protections. I know, like Kroger, for example, one of the big demands of workers there is in states that don't have a mandatory face mask rule. Like, obviously major cities are saying you have to wear face mask in public, but across the country, local cities and states have not put those, implemented those rules. And in those areas, people are just going into the Kroger or the grocery store or whatever without any kind of face mask, which, exposes those workers. So those are the second demands too, on those corporations to say that, like, you know, you need to make the decision and say that we won't accept anyone coming into the store without face coverings. These workers really need our support right now. We need to be vigilant and standing with them because, yeah, they are essential and they need to be empowered. They need to be appreciated, but they also need to be empowered too. And that's the second level discourse that, like, we need to be promoting instead of just this kind of like clap for them, right? We need to make sure that they're getting paid, that they have healthcare, that they're not being abused by these massive corporations, oversight or slack, basically.
Yeah, semi-related, David. Check the tweet I just put in the gem segment.
Okay, just in 1 second.
It's kind of a fun video based on workers dealing with people who don't wear masks in.
Oh no, I can't. I'll tell you, like, I'm pulling it up right now. All right, here we go. These sort of kill me, though, to be honest.
This is funny.
All right, here we go. Sorry. What a pampered coward, seriously.
Oh my God, what a bloated sack of shit.
I hate
it. In a free country.
Oh, woke up in a free country.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sorry, all of you right-wingers, you know, who promote the free, like, businesses can do whatever they want, right? Shut the hell up.
All of a sudden, like, do whatever they want when they're, you know, slashing people's wages or putting them, you know, exposing them to dangerous toxins or repetitive stresses.
We need to amend the Constitution to say businesses can do whatever they want except be cucks.
Oh my God. All right. It's great. All right, folks. We're going to go to the post game. Daniel Bessner is going to be with us. We've got a bunch of stories to get to, including a mini illicit history of permanent normalized trade relations with China and the world we are in today. Incredibly. And of course, all of these efforts are supported by you becoming a patron, including the main show. So go to patreon.com/TMBS. Red Emma's is restocked with Against the Web, Cosmopolitan Answer to the New Right. Go order it. Folks are really digging the book. They're really digging the book. Use Red Emma's or go to IndieBound. IndieBound in general too. You know, if you're buying books, and you should be if you can, buy books at independent bookstores and definitely not at Amazon. Thank you guys. Thanks to everybody who makes this possible. We will see you in the post game.